Beneath the Amazon lies a grid of colossal earthworks spanning hundreds of miles. This is the story of how mega-scale earthworks reveal a civilization far more organized than believed. By the end, you will see human history in a completely new light, with textbooks ready for rewriting. What kind of society could coordinate thousands of people to reshape a continent? And why did they build monuments only visible from the sky? We are about to uncover a lost world of astonishing order, hidden for centuries under jungle and soil. What does it mean for a civilization to truly leave its mark on the earth? The ground beneath the western Amazon holds a secret written in earth. Across the Brazilian state of Acre, a landscape once thought pristine reveals a staggering pattern. From the sky, the forest canopy parts to show over 450 geometric clearings. They are not natural formations. They are immense designs carved into the soil, forming perfect circles, broad squares, and complex octagons. Some of these earthworks, known as geoglyphs, stretch over 900 feet across. Collectively, they cover an area larger than many of our modern metropolitan centers. This is not a collection of isolated curiosities. It is a coordinated network, a vast canvas of human intention etched across hundreds of miles. The precision is breathtaking. The sides of a square geoglyph are straight for their entire length, the corners meeting at sharp, deliberate angles. A circular ditch maintains a consistent width and depth, tracing a near-flawless ring. This level of geometric clarity does not happen by accident. It requires planning, measurement, and a shared vision executed on a continental scale. Archaeologist Jennifer Watling and her colleagues have studied these sites extensively. Their calculations are humbling. To build just one of these large earthworks required moving millions of cubic feet of earth. We are not talking about a small community digging a trench over a weekend. This was an enterprise of staggering effort. It demanded a workforce numbering in the thousands, all laboring in sophistication goes beyond mere construction. The geometry itself speaks of a higher order of thinking. Many of these earthworks are aligned with celestial events. Their avenues and openings point toward the sunrise on a solstice or track the path of significant stars. This means the builders were not just moving Earth, they were integrating astronomical knowledge into the very land. They were mapping the heavens onto the ground, creating a terrestrial calendar of immense scale. This transforms the sites from simple enclosures into cosmological instruments. Such precision does not arise from a disorganized group. It requires foremen, planners, individuals who could translate a grand vision into actionable steps for thousands of workers. They had to calculate angles, maintain sight lines over long distances, and ensure that a project begun by one generation could be continued seamlessly by the next. This points to a society with specialized roles, with transmitted engineering principles, and with a command of complex mathematical and astronomical concepts that we are only beginning to decode. The Earth itself becomes their blueprint, revealing a mind far more organized than we ever gave them credit for. The second profound clue lies not within the ditches, but in the very fabric of the landscape that connects them. For a long time, researchers focused on the earthworks as isolated ceremonial sites, but new technology has pulled back the canopy to reveal a breathtaking truth. These geometric clearings were not lonely monuments in an untamed jungle. They were integral parts of a meticulously organized and productive world. Recent surveys using laser imaging, known as Lidar, have pierced the dense forest cover to map the ancient ground beneath. The images show that many of these earthworks are linked by long, straight raised causeways. Think of them as ancient roads or processional ways, purposefully built to connect community centers across what was once a more open landscape. Even more telling, the surveys reveal intricate networks of canals and what appear to be managed fish ponds situated near these sites. This transforms our understanding completely. We are not looking at a civilization that simply built monuments. We are looking at a civilization that engineered its entire environment. The geoglyphs were nodes, central points within a vast, intelligent system of resource management. The land around them was not wild. It was a carefully curated mosaic. Experts like Professor Charles Clement describe this as a domesticated landscape. Imagine walking through this ancient Amazon. You would not be fighting through a thick, impenetrable wall of random vegetation. You would be moving through something more like a vast, productive garden. The forest was an orchard. Ancient peoples selectively cultivated and nurtured groves of incredibly useful trees, fruit bearers like cocoa and acai, palms with oily nuts, and trees with strong timber or medicinal bark. They enriched the soil, creating patches of extraordinarily fertile earth known as Terra Preta, or dark earth, which still boosts plant growth today. This was not slash-and-burn agriculture. This was a sophisticated, sustainable agroforestry system, a living breadbasket designed to feed a large, settled population year after year, generation after generation. The straight causeways connected these productive zones. The canals managed water for both transportation and aquaculture. The geometric earthworks, then, were likely centers for community gathering, ceremony, and perhaps governance, placed strategically within this managed terrain. This revelation shatters another old myth, the idea of the Amazon as a pristine wilderness untouched by human hands before European contact. The truth is far more fascinating. This was not a wilderness at all. It was a homeland deliberately and intelligently sculpted over centuries. The civilization here did not live off the land, they partnered with it. They shaped it with such profound intention that their design still whispers from the soil today. So if they built this world of plenty and order, what finally happened to it? The answer may be written in a language we are only now learning to read, found in the most unexpected of places. That brings us to the third, and perhaps most telling, clue hidden within the earthworks. Who gave the orders? Moving millions of cubic feet of soil for a single geometric enclosure was not a spontaneous community project. The logistics are staggering. Archaeologists estimate that constructing just one of the larger geoglyphs required the equivalent of several thousand person-days of labor. Think about that for a moment. If 100 people worked on it, they would be digging and moving earth for over 2 months straight, every single day. And this was just one site among hundreds. This scale of effort does not happen through casual agreement. It implies a social structure with clear organization, with leaders who could plan, mobilize, and sustain a workforce over a long period. This points directly to some form of social hierarchy. There must have been individuals or a council with the authority to coordinate such an enormous undertaking. Yet, intriguingly, there is little archaeological evidence to suggest this labor was forced. Researchers have found no signs of defensive walls around these sites, no evidence of weaponry suggesting conflict or control through threat. Instead, the consistency is what stands out. The geometric designs, the construction techniques, the very purpose of these places remain remarkably uniform across hundreds of miles. This uniformity is a powerful signal. It suggests a shared cultural blueprint, a common set of beliefs and traditions so strong that communities separated by vast distances were all building the same kinds of structures. This hints at a unifying force, perhaps a priestly class or respected elders who held the knowledge of the heavens and the rituals that these earthworks facilitated. They were the architects of a shared identity, and the people built to manifest that identity upon the land. Further evidence of this social complexity comes from what has been found within the earthworks. While they are not filled with golden treasures, Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of exotic pottery and materials that originated from far away. These items speak of established trade networks, connections that stretched across the Amazon basin. In a simple, egalitarian band, such rare goods would be uncommon. Their presence at these central sites suggests a degree of social stratification. It implies that certain individuals, perhaps those who organized the construction or led the ceremonies, had access to or controlled the distribution of these valued items. This all paints a picture of a society far more intricate than we once imagined. They coordinated massive, non-utilitarian projects not for defense or immediate survival, but for ceremony, for astronomy, for community cohesion. This level of collective action for symbolic purposes is one of the hallmarks of a complex civilization. It means they had moved beyond the daily struggle for resources into a realm where shared belief and collective identity became powerful enough to literally move mountains, or at least to shape the continent. This realization forces us to confront a final, haunting question. If they were so numerous, so organized, and so successful in sculpting their world, where did they all go? The answer lies in a shadow that fell across the entire hemisphere, a change written not in stone, but in something far more delicate. The story of this civilization is written not only in space, but in deep time. To grasp the scale of their achievement, we must ask a fundamental question. How long did this all take? Modern science provides a startling answer through radiocarbon dating of charcoal and soil from the earthworks. The results reveal a chronology that reshapes history. The peak period of construction for these geometric wonders spans from roughly 2,000 years ago to about 700 years ago. That is a period of over 1,300 years of continuous, organized building. To put that in perspective, the Roman Empire, from its legendary founding to its traditional fall in the West, lasted for about 1,200 years. We are talking about a cultural tradition with a similar, breathtaking longevity in the heart of the Amazon. This is not the story of a short-lived building frenzy. It is the story of a civilization that found a formula for sustainability and stuck with it, refining it across dozens of human generations. Archaeologists can trace the slow, deliberate evolution of the earthwork styles. Designs change gradually, new forms appear while old ones are maintained or expanded. This overlapping, phased construction is a powerful clue. It tells us that the knowledge of how to build, and more importantly, the why to build, was carefully passed down. A project started by a great-grandparent would be understood and continued by their great-grandchildren. This requires incredibly stable social institutions. It requires a shared identity and purpose so strong that it could outlive any single leader, any temporary hardship, any passing century. This temporal depth forces a major recalibration of our understanding of the ancient Americas. For a long time, narratives of cultural complexity centered on the well-known empires of the Andes or Mesoamerica, societies that rose to prominence in the centuries just before European contact. The Amazon was often portrayed as a backwater, a place where complex society simply could not take root. The earthworks of Acre and beyond dismantle that idea completely. They show that large-scale, organized societies capable of monumental landscape engineering emerged in the Amazon independently, and they did so much earlier than anyone suspected. Their golden age was already well underway 2 millennia ago, a time when many other great civilizations across the globe were also laying their foundational stones. This realization places the Amazonian builders on a parallel historical track. While engineers were raising the Colosseum in Rome, architects were plotting perfect circles in the Amazon. While scholars were debating philosophy in Athens, astronomers here were aligning earthworks with the solstice sun. This was not a derivative culture. It was a brilliant, original flowering of human ingenuity in one of the planet's most challenging environments. Their sustained success for over a millennium proves they were not just surviving, they were thriving, governed by a profound and enduring social contract. So we are left with a society of immense scale, sophistication, and longevity, which makes the silence that followed all the more profound. What could possibly interrupt a tradition that had weathered over 1,000 years of history? The answer lies in an arrival that changed everything, not with a clash of armies, but with something far more insidious. The scale we are discussing demands a global perspective. To truly appreciate what the Amazonian builders accomplished, we must place their work alongside the most famous mega projects of the ancient world. We all know the iconic images: the Great Pyramid of Giza, a tomb for a single divine king, or Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain, a majestic ring of stones aligned with the heavens. These are the monuments that traditionally define civilization in our collective imagination. They are concentrated, singular feats of engineering that draw millions of pilgrims and tourists every year. The Amazonian earthworks present a fundamentally different kind of achievement. While a single geoglyph is immense, its true power lies in its plurality. There are not just one or two, but over 450 of them discovered so far, scattered across a region the size of a modern country. In terms of the sheer cumulative area transformed, the total Earth moved across this network may well surpass that of the Great Pyramids. But here is the critical distinction: the pyramids are a destination, while the earthworks were a system. They were not built to entomb a ruler for eternity, but to serve a living, breathing community across generations. This contrast is not about which is more impressive, but about what each project reveals about the society that built it. The classic model, seen in Egypt or Mesopotamia, often points toward a highly centralized power, a god-king who could command the labor of thousands to manifest his personal glory and secure his passage to the afterlife. The resources flow upward to create a single, staggering point of focus. The Amazonian model suggests something else entirely. The uniformity and spread of the geoglyphs, connected by causeways and set within managed forests, point to a more distributed, networked form of organization. It was less about a single all-powerful center and more about a shared cultural operating system adopted by many interconnected communities across a vast territory. Their monument was not a tomb or a temple in the traditional sense. It was the entire landscape itself, engineered for ceremony, astronomy, and crucially for sustainable living. This is what expands our very definition of civilization. We have long equated complexity with towering architecture, dense urban centers, and explicit hierarchies carved in stone. The Amazon reveals another path, one where complexity is woven into the ecology. Their greatest achievement was not a city of stone, but a cultivated, productive forest, a garden continent punctuated by ceremonial earthworks that bound the community to the cosmos and to each other. It was a civilization measured not by the height of its palaces, but by the depth of its connection to the land. This realization does not diminish the pyramids. It simply illuminates a road not taken, a model of large-scale society that prioritized integration over domination, sustainability over concentration. It shows us that human beings can organize themselves in profoundly different ways to create lasting order. And if this society was so successful, so deeply rooted in its environment for over a millennium, what could possibly have caused such a profound and final silence? The answer lies in an invasion that carried no swords but something far more devastating. The motivation behind such immense, sustained effort is perhaps the most compelling mystery of all. Why would thousands of people, for generation after generation, dedicate their lives to moving mountains of earth for geometric shapes in the ground? The answer does not lie in economics or defense, but in something far more powerful: shared belief. These earthworks were not merely construction sites, they were sacred spaces, physical manifestations of a unifying cosmology. Look closely at the designs. Many are aligned with the solstice sun or the rising of significant stars. Their avenues become sightlines to the heavens, turning the entire landscape into a colossal astronomical observatory. Others are shaped like immense mythological creatures, serpents or birds, visible only from above, connecting the community to stories of creation and the spirit world. This was a way of writing their beliefs directly onto the earth, making the spiritual landscape tangible. Anthropologist Dr. Clark Erikson offers a profound insight. He suggests that the act of building itself was the ritual. The decades of communal labor were not a separate task done to create a stage for later ceremonies. The digging, the moving of soil, the coordinated effort, this was the ceremony. It was an act of world-making. Each basket of earth moved was a participatory prayer, a collective reaffirmation of their place in the cosmos and their bond with each other and the land. In this light, the labor transforms from a burdensome chore into a meaningful act of faith and identity. Imagine the social cohesion this would create. A young person would learn the stories and the star alignments from their elders while working on the same embankment their great-grandparents began. They weren't just building a ditch, they were weaving themselves into the living fabric of their community's history and destiny. This shared spiritual vision provided the ultimate justification for the monumental scale. It was the ideological glue that made such complex organization not just possible but deeply meaningful. The project manager was likely a spiritual leader, the blueprint a celestial map, the workforce a congregation. This explains the uniformity across vast distances. They weren't following the orders of a distant king. They were all participating in the same profound ritual of belonging, using the same cultural language written in earth and sky. This cohesive force, stronger than any army, is what allowed them to coordinate across centuries. But even the strongest beliefs exist within a physical world. This meticulously balanced system, where ritual, ecology, and society were intertwined, faced a test for which no ceremony could prepare them. A change was coming, not from the stars they so carefully watched, but from across a vast ocean. The fourth and perhaps most dynamic clue lies in the lines that connected the dots. We have seen the earthworks as monumental nodes, but their true power was unlocked by what linked them together. Stretching between these geometric centers, archaeologists have mapped extensive networks of raised causeways and carefully dug canals. These were not mere footpaths worn by time. They were deliberate infrastructure, an ancient transportation grid engineered across a challenging landscape of seasonal floods and dense vegetation. The causeways, built up above the wet ground, provided dry, reliable routes for travel. The canals managed water flow and likely allowed for movement by canoe, especially during the rainy seasons. This transforms our understanding from a collection of impressive sites to a fully integrated system. It was the circulatory system of a living civilization. Think of it as the interstate highway network of its time, but one built entirely by human labor without beasts of burden or wheeled carts. These roads and waterways connected communities that might be dozens of miles apart, weaving them into a single, coherent cultural and economic sphere. The implications of this connectivity are profound. It allowed for the steady flow of goods that would have been essential for daily life and ritual. Specialized pottery, distinct in style and function from one area, has been found at earthworks far from its origin. Seeds of prized fruit trees, cuttings for cultivation, and rare stones for tools or ceremonial objects could travel along these routes. This movement of materials points directly to established trade networks, the lifeblood of any complex society. But it was more than just commerce. These pathways moved ideas. They carried stories, astronomical knowledge, and the very architectural blueprints for the earthworks themselves. A new design or a refinement in construction technique could spread efficiently from one community to the next, explaining the remarkable uniformity we see across such a vast territory. This constant exchange fostered a shared identity. A person traveling from one geometric enclosure to another would not feel like a stranger entering foreign land. They would recognize the layout, understand the rituals, and see familiar symbols. This connectivity enabled the kind of collective action that defines advanced organization. It meant that labor could be coordinated over a wider area, that resources could be pooled for large projects, and that a collective response to challenges could be mobilized. The civilization revealed by these networks was not just locally organized, it was regionally interconnected, a tapestry of communities bound together by shared purpose and the physical lines they built across the earth. This level of integration raises a pivotal question about their legacy. If they were so connected, so capable of large-scale coordination, what kind of enduring mark did they leave on the world that followed? The answer may be hiding in plain sight, in the very forest we once thought was wild. For centuries, the true scale of this civilization was hidden by its own greatest creation, the forest. Ground teams could only study one earthwork at a time, painstakingly clearing vegetation to trace a single ditch or embankment. The overarching pattern, the grand design connecting everything, remained frustratingly out of reach. The jungle canopy was an impenetrable veil. That is, until a revolutionary eye in the sky pulled the veil back in one breathtaking sweep. The technology is called Lidar, an acronym for light detection and ranging. Mounted on aircraft, it fires millions of laser pulses toward the ground. Most bounce off the leaves and branches, but a precious few penetrate tiny gaps, hit the solid earth below, and return. By meticulously filtering out the returns from the vegetation, computers can construct a precise, three-dimensional map of the bare ground surface, as if someone had magically deleted every single tree and bush. The results are nothing short of revelatory. Where traditional archaeology saw isolated clearings, Lidar reveals a continent-wide canvas. In the Brazilian Amazon, surveys have not just confirmed known geoglyphs, they have uncovered hundreds more, pushing the known count into the thousands. More importantly, the scans show these are not lonely monuments. They are linked by those straight, raised causeways forming clear networks. They are integrated with canals and reservoirs. The LiDAR maps show the earthworks as central nodes within a vast, intelligently organized terrain of fields, ponds, and residential platforms. This technological leap has had the same transformative effect in other tropical forests. In Guatemala's Petén region, a LiDAR survey over ancient Mayan territories yielded a parallel shock. The jungle was thought to hide scattered ceremonial centers. Instead, the scans revealed something astonishing: expansive low-density urban landscapes. Around famous sites like Tikal, the forest floor was etched with a sprawling web of causeways linking not just grand temples, but countless small house mounds, agricultural terraces, and irrigation channels. The land was meticulously managed and densely populated in a dispersed garden city model. This LiDAR evidence is the final, irrefutable proof. These were not isolated ceremonial sites visited occasionally. They were the beating hearts of a lived-in, daily managed, and fully inhabited world. The geometric earthworks were central plazas within a continuous cultural and agricultural matrix. This forces a dramatic and necessary revision of history. For the Amazon, earlier population estimates, often in the low hundreds of thousands, are now seen as far too conservative. Scholars now suggest millions of people could have lived within these managed forests, a scale comparable to many classic Old World civilizations. The implications ripple across the globe. It proves that tropical forests were not barriers to complex society, but catalysts for it. They were not virgin wildernesses but homelands, shaped over millennia by societies that mastered their environment without destroying it. The LiDAR revolution does more than show us where to dig. It rewrites the opening chapters of human civilization, revealing chapters we never knew were there. But this discovery of scale leads to an even deeper mystery, one of purpose. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? The answer may lie not in the soil, but in the stars. This final clue may be the most revealing of all, for it shows us not just how they built, but how they lived. The Lidar maps present a surprising absence. Around the magnificent geometric earthworks, researchers expected to find the ruins of dense, classic cities with crowded streets and towering palaces. Yet that is not what the scans show. Instead, they reveal a different kind of order entirely. The landscape is dotted with countless small, raised platforms, each likely supporting a single-family homestead. These home sites are surrounded by what appear to be small garden plots, orchards, and managed forest patches. They cluster around the large ceremonial earthworks like satellites around a central hub, all connected by those straight, raised causeways. This pattern has a name: garden urbanism or low-density urbanism. It represents a revolutionary form of social organization. Imagine a civilization without a congested, sprawling capital city. Instead, picture a vast, continuous, and meticulously planned countryside. Every family lived on its own productive land, a mini estate woven into the larger agricultural tapestry. The large earthworks were not surrounded by slums or markets, but by a green and productive hinterland. They served as the community's downtown, the central plaza for gatherings, ceremonies, and trade, while people returned home each night to their own managed piece of the forest. This model solves a fundamental puzzle of ancient Amazonian life. How do you support a large, complex society in an environment where soil nutrients can be fragile and thinly spread? The answer was to spread out, but to do so in an organized, connected way. By distributing the population across the landscape in homesteads integrated with food production, they avoided overstressing any single area. They turned the entire region into a sustainable, productive engine. This pattern is not unique to the Amazon. We see echoes of it in the vast hinterland around Angkor Wat in Cambodia, where Lidar revealed a similar low-density urban sprawl of reservoirs, home mounds, and temples. It shows us that human organization can manifest in profoundly different ways. We have long equated civilization with dense, walled cities, but here was a civilization of the landscape itself. Their monument was not a skyline of stone, but a living, breathing green network. The geometric earthworks were the anchors, the cultural and spiritual focal points that gave this dispersed population a shared identity and purpose. The roads were the threads that stitched this vast social fabric together. It was a networked, agrarian-based civilization that achieved scale and sophistication without the classic urban core. This changes everything. It means that the signature of a complex society might not be found in crowded streets, but in the quiet, deliberate order of a cultivated forest, in the purposeful lines of roads connecting homestead to ceremonial center. Their greatest achievement was not a city, but a system, a way of living sustainably and meaningfully across an entire continent. This realization brings us to the inevitable, haunting question. If this system was so brilliantly adapted, so sustainable for over a millennium, what could possibly have caused it to fade into silence, leaving only these geometric ghosts in the ground? The genius of their design lies in its profound practicality. These were not just ceremonial spaces, they were masterful feats of environmental engineering. The builders faced a formidable challenge: a land of dramatic seasonal floods and notoriously poor, acidic soils that quickly leached nutrients. Their solution was as elegant as it was effective. The deep ditches encircling each earthwork were not merely symbolic boundaries. They functioned as sophisticated drainage canals, channeling excess rainwater away from the central plaza and living areas during the intense wet season. The excavated earth was then piled to create tall, broad embankments. These raised banks were far more than viewing platforms. They became the foundation for the entire community. On these elevated surfaces, people built their homes safe from flooding, and more importantly, they created rich garden plots. This simple act of moving earth transformed the local ecology. The ditches and banks together created a complex microtopography, a mosaic of wet and dry zones that could support a wider variety of plants. Researchers have found that these altered landscapes actually enhanced local biodiversity, attracting different species and creating new ecological niches. The builders were not clearing land, they were sculpting it to be more productive and resilient. This reveals a deep, empirical understanding of their environment, knowledge hard-won over generations of careful observation. They learned which soils held firm, where water would flow, and how to shape the land to work for them. They were engaging in a sophisticated, long-term dialogue with the rhythms of the forest, the floodwaters, and the soil. This was sustainability in its most ancient and intelligent form. They invested labor not for a single season's harvest, but for the fertility of the land for generations to come. The very structure of their earthworks shows a society planning in centuries, designing systems that would endure and enrich the landscape long after the builders themselves were gone. It is a powerful testament to a civilization that measured its success not by conquest, but by its harmonious and enduring partnership with the earth. The silence of these sites presents a fascinating puzzle. With no written records found at the earthworks themselves, how did this society transmit such precise and complex information across dozens of generations? How do you teach a perfect circle, a celestial alignment, or a stable embankment technique without a single page of instruction? The answer lies not in libraries of stone, but in the living culture itself, in a powerful system of intangible knowledge. This was a civilization that ran on a sophisticated cultural operating system, a shared software passed from mind to mind. The first clue to this system is found in the remarkable consistency of the earthworks themselves. Archaeologists measuring sites hundreds of miles apart have noticed something extraordinary. The dimensions of ditches, the widths of embankments, and the diameters of circles often seem to be based on a common unit of measurement. It appears they used a standardized length, perhaps a specific chord or a carved measuring rod, that was known and used across the entire region. This was a technical standard as vital as an inch or a meter, and it was faithfully reproduced for centuries. This implies a guild of specialists, master builders, and surveyors who held this knowledge. They were the human repositories of geometry and engineering. Their training would have been rigorous, likely involving years of apprenticeship, memorizing formulas, and learning to use simple but effective tools like sighting poles and knotted cords to lay out vast designs on the ground. But technical knowledge alone doesn't explain the enduring purpose. The why behind the designs, their connection to the stars and to community identity, was likely encoded in a richer medium, oral tradition. Imagine knowledge woven into epic stories told around evening fires, into songs sung during communal work, into ceremonies performed at the solstice within the very earthworks they built. The myth of a celestial serpent might encode the correct alignment for a ditch. A founding story might describe the first geometric enclosure, providing a template for all others. This fusion of myth and mathematics made the information unforgettable, embedding it in the very identity of the people. The ritual act of construction itself, as we discussed, was a powerful teaching tool. A young person learning to dig would also be learning the stories, the star lore, and the sacred meaning of their labor from the elders beside them. This created a seamless cycle where knowledge was not just taught, but experienced and embodied. This intangible framework was astonishingly robust. It allowed for the precise transmission of complex standards over 1,000 years, surviving the passing of individual leaders and the fluctuations of seasons. It proves that profound organization can thrive without written archives. Their hardware was the reshaped earth, but their software was the living culture, a collective memory strong enough to coordinate a continent. This realization makes their ultimate fate not just a historical event, but a profound loss of a unique way of knowing the world. The scale of their ambition required an equally impressive foundation. To feed the thousands of workers who built these monuments, and to sustain the specialists who designed them, this society needed more than a simple hand-to-mouth existence. The sixth clue lies in the very soil and waterways around the earthworks, revealing an economic engine of remarkable diversity and resilience. For decades, the textbook image of ancient Amazonians was that of small bands of hunter-gatherers, constantly on the move, living lightly off the land's wild bounty. That model simply cannot account for the reality on the ground. You cannot mobilize a workforce for a multi-generational project if everyone is solely focused on the day's hunt or the next foraging patch. A labor surplus requires a food surplus, so what were they eating? The answer transforms a jungle into a pantry. This was not a wilderness to be foraged, but a landscape to be harvested. The economy was built on a sophisticated and deliberate mix of strategies. Agroforestry was the cornerstone. As Lidar and soil studies show, the forest around the earthworks was a managed mosaic. They cultivated groves of fruit and nut trees like Brazil nut and acai palm, creating permanent, renewable orchards, but they also practiced intensive cultivation. Evidence from pottery residues and ancient plant remains tells us they were growing staple crops on a large scale. Manioc, a hardy root vegetable that can be stored and processed into flour, was a dietary bedrock. Maize was also grown, adding vital carbohydrates. This combination provided a reliable, storable food base, yet they didn't stop at the forest edge or the field. Archaeologists have identified networks of artificial ponds and canals integrated with the earthworks. These were likely used for managed aquaculture, raising fish and turtles, a constant source of protein that didn't require hunting in the deep forest. They were farming the water just as carefully as they farmed the land. The proof of this abundant economy is found in the tools and facilities they left behind. Researchers have uncovered large ceramic vessels for storage and grinding stones for processing manioc and maize into flour. Most telling are the remains of storage pits designed to keep harvests safe from moisture and pests. This is the hallmark of a society thinking beyond the next meal. They were planning for seasons, for bad years, and for feeding large, non-productive gatherings. This diversified, managed economy provided the material foundation for everything else. It created the surplus that freed people from daily food procurement. That surplus allowed for the emergence of specialists, the engineers who planned the earthworks, the astronomers who tracked the stars for alignments, the ritual leaders who coordinated the ceremonies. A person who spends their days studying geometry or celestial movements is not hunting or gardening. They are being supported by the collective surplus of their community. This reveals the true engine of their complexity. Their civilization was not organized around a king's tribute, but around productive, resilient food systems. The geometric earthworks were not just spiritual centers, they were the hubs of this economic network, places where surplus was managed, distributed, and perhaps even traded. The straight causeways connected not just communities but orchards to fields and fields to fishing ponds. This was a civilization that understood food security as the first principle of power, not the power to command, but the power to build, to plan, and to endure. With such a robust and intelligent system supporting them, their cultural flowering seems inevitable. But even the most resilient systems have vulnerabilities, and a storm was coming that would test this entire way of life in a way nothing had before. The intricate web they wove, however, faced a threat it could not engineer around. Around 700 years ago, a profound change rippled across this organized landscape. The pace of new earthwork construction slowed, then stopped. Many of the great geometric enclosures maintained for over a millennium began to be reclaimed by the forest. This timing is not a coincidence. It aligns with the first waves of European contact reaching the South American continent. But the end did not come from battles or immediate conquest in these remote interior regions. It arrived silently, invisibly, and with devastating efficiency through introduced epidemic diseases. Illnesses like smallpox, measles, and influenza, against which Amazonian populations had no natural immunity, spread ahead of the explorers themselves, traveling along indigenous trade routes that once carried prosperity. The result was a demographic catastrophe of unimaginable scale. Research suggests that within the first century of contact, some populations may have declined by 90% or more. This was not merely a tragic loss of life, it was the unraveling of a civilization's very foundation. The complex social organization, the guilds of master builders, the astronomers, the networks of trade and shared labor, all of it depended on a critical mass of people. The cultural operating system required a sufficient number of minds to hold the knowledge, and enough hands to enact the rituals of building that maintained their world. When the labor pool and the lineage of specialists were shattered, the ability to sustain those grand, coordinated projects vanished, the social fabric, woven over centuries, frayed beyond repair. Yet to say this society simply vanished would be a profound misunderstanding. Its legacy did not die, it transformed. The geometric earthworks, though overgrown, were never forgotten. They persisted in the oral histories of the indigenous peoples who survived and adapted. These places were often remembered as sites of ancestral power, the homes of spirits, or the work of ancient giants. The knowledge of their location and significance was kept alive in stories, a cultural memory etched not in soil but in language and tradition. Even more tangible is the ecological legacy. The fingerprints of this civilization are literally baked into the Amazonian earth. Across the region, patches of extraordinarily fertile soil known as Terra Preta, or Amazonian dark earth, mark the locations of ancient settlements and gardens. This is not natural soil, it is a human-made creation, a rich black compost engineered from charcoal, food waste, pottery shards, and organic matter. It remains fantastically productive even today, a testament to their sophisticated understanding of soil science and long-term land management. The very composition of the surrounding forest is also their living inheritance. The abundance of fruit and nut trees we see in many areas is not a random act of nature, but the result of centuries of deliberate selection and cultivation. Their managed landscape shaped the ecology for millennia after they stopped actively tending it. The collapse then was not an erasure. It was a transition from a highly centralized, monument-building phase of society to a different, more dispersed way of life that carried forward the memory and the physical bounty of what came before. The civilization's greatest monument ultimately became the resilient, enriched landscape itself, and the enduring stories of those who never forgot the ancestors who shaped it. This staggering scale of construction forces a fundamental question of numbers. How many people did it take to build and sustain this world? For generations, scholars envisioned the ancient Amazon as a green emptiness, a vast wilderness dotted with only small, mobile groups. Early estimates spoke of populations in the tens of thousands across the entire basin, a scattering of people living lightly on the land. But the evidence of the earthworks and the managed forests they sat within makes that old picture mathematically impossible. You simply cannot move millions of cubic feet of earth, maintain vast orchards, and coordinate trade across hundreds of miles with a tiny, dispersed population. The logistics demand a critical mass of people. New research is now grappling with this reality, leading to a dramatic recalibration. Archaeologists and ecologists are combining data from the density of earthwork sites with sophisticated models of the carrying capacity of those enriched, managed forests. The results are startling. For the regions most densely marked by geoglyphs and causeways, like parts of modern-day Brazil and Bolivia, revised estimates now suggest populations numbered not in the thousands, but in the millions. We are talking about demographic scales comparable to many of the classic civilizations of the ancient world. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a complete paradigm shift. A population of millions transforms our understanding of what was happening here. It means large, settled communities, not temporary camps. It means a substantial labor force that could be mobilized for public works without collapsing the society's ability to feed itself. It implies the kind of social infrastructure that supports specialization: the engineers, the astronomers, the artisans, and the administrators who do not grow their own food, but are supported by the collective surplus. This demographic weight is the bedrock of the complexity we have been tracing. Think of it as the foundation of a pyramid. At the very top are the breathtaking geometric monuments, the visible achievements. But supporting them is a broad middle layer of organized labor, trade, and ceremony. And beneath it all, providing the essential stability, is this vast base population, living in their networked homesteads, tending their forest gardens and fish ponds. This revised demography shatters the persistent myth of the Amazon as a green desert. It was not an empty space waiting to be discovered. It was a peopled landscape, a vibrant, humming network of human activity. Rivers were highways, forest trails were well-maintained roads, and the clearings were centers of community life. This changes the emotional texture of the story. We are not looking at a mysterious, lonely civilization that appeared out of nowhere. We are looking at a successful, long-term adaptation, a way of life that supported millions of people for over 1,000 years. They were not struggling against the jungle, they were thriving within a partnership with it, and their greatest testament is the sheer number of lives their system sustained. With this many people living in such an organized fashion, the imprint they left behind must be more than just ditches and banks. What other, subtler signatures of their world might still be waiting to be recognized? The sheer geographic spread of these earthworks reveals a seventh, equally profound clue. From the seasonally flooded savannas of Bolivia, known as the Llanos de Moxos, to the dense rainforests of the Brazilian state of Acre, separated by hundreds of miles of challenging terrain, the designs speak a common language. A perfect circle dug in Bolivia shares its precise proportions with a circle in Brazil. The width of a ditch, the angle of a bank, the specific choice between a square or an octagon, these are not random decisions. They follow a consistent set of rules, a shared cultural grammar. This uniformity is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for a truly integrated civilization. We are not looking at isolated villages that occasionally saw each other's work and decided to copy a neat idea. That might explain a few similar sites in a local cluster. But this consistency across a region the size of France points to something much deeper. It suggests a widespread school of thought, a set of engineering and cosmological principles so fundamental that they were adopted and reproduced across an entire cultural sphere. How does such a specific blueprint travel across a continent without a central capital, without a conquering army to impose it? The answer lies in the powerful, intangible connections that bind societies together. Think of it as a shared software for sacred space, the knowledge of how to build, and more importantly, the symbolic meaning behind why you build a circle of a certain diameter was likely carried by specialized individuals. These might have been master builders or ritual specialists who traveled between communities, perhaps following those very causeways that linked the earthworks. Their movement would have been facilitated by pilgrimage. Imagine families or community representatives journeying to a major geometric enclosure for a solstice ceremony, witnessing the precision of its design and carrying that vision back to their homeland. Trade networks, which we know existed from the movement of exotic goods, provided another conduit, along with pots and polished stones, ideas traveled. But perhaps the strongest glue was social. Intermarriage among community leaders or respected families would have created kinship ties that spanned vast distances. A person from one area marrying into another would bring their understanding of the world, their community's stories and building traditions. Over generations, these connections would weave a dense tapestry of shared identity. A person standing in a newly built earthwork in Acre would know fundamentally that they were participating in the same grand tradition as their distant relatives in Bolivia. They were all writing the same sentence in the language of earth and sky. This cultural integration is what allowed for the astonishing coordination we see. It was not a top-down empire with an edict from a single ruler. It was a bottom-up civilization unified by a common vision. The lack of a single, obvious capital city is not a sign of primitiveness, but of a different kind of sophistication, a networked peer-to-peer model of social complexity. Their unity was not enforced by walls, but sustained by shared belief, mutual exchange, and a collective commitment to a way of life that literally reshaped their continent. This realization forces us to ask, what was the core of this belief system that proved so powerful, so magnetic, that it could coordinate minds and hands across such impossible distances for over 1,000 years? The absence of fortifications around these earthworks is a powerful statement in itself. Walk the perimeter of a massive geometric enclosure, and you will find deep ditches and tall embankments, but they are not designed to keep people out. The ditches are often on the inside of the banks, which would be an ineffective defensive layout. There are no sharpened stakes, no evidence of reinforced gates, no strategic placements on high ground for military advantage. These are open, inviting forms, their avenues leading inward toward a central plaza, not barricading against an external threat. This architectural choice speaks volumes about the society that built them. It suggests extended periods of internal stability, a civilization that was not organized around the constant fear of attack from its neighbors. Now, this does not mean conflict was entirely absent from their world. Evidence of sporadic violence exists in the archaeological record, as it does for almost every human society. But the scale and primary purpose of their greatest communal endeavors were not martial. They were something else entirely. The investment of millions of person-hours was directed toward ceremony, toward tracking the heavens, toward managing water and enriching soil. Their collective energy was funneled into projects that strengthened internal cohesion and harmonized with their environment, not into walls and weapons. This represents a profound prioritization of values. Think of the classic arc of many ancient civilizations, where increasing social complexity often leads to concentrated power, territorial expansion, and monumental architecture celebrating military conquest or divine kings. Here we see a different path. Complexity led to larger, more coordinated communal ritual and ever more sophisticated landscape engineering. Their version of Monumental was not a temple to a warrior god, but a celestial calendar made of earth. Their version of power was not the power to dominate others, but the power to mobilize a community for a shared spiritual and ecological vision. This focus on internal cohesion and sustainability over militaristic expansion offers a rare and invaluable insight. It shows us a model of large-scale society where the primary social contract was built around collective participation in world-making, not around defense or subjugation. It hints at a social fabric strong enough to bind people together across vast distances without the constant glue of an external enemy. The true fortification, it seems, was not made of wood or earth, but of shared belief and a mutually beneficial relationship with the land they called home. This peaceful orientation, however, makes their ultimate encounter with the outside world all the more tragic, a collision of two fundamentally different ways of organizing human life. The evidence of their world is not only found in the shape of their ditches, but in the very pollen and soil they left behind. To truly understand the scale of their organization, we must look to the quiet sciences of botany and soil chemistry. While archaeologists map the grand structures, paleobotanists peer into the microscopic record. They study tiny, durable silica particles called phytoliths, which form inside plants and linger in the soil for millennia. These microscopic time capsules reveal a stunning detail. Around the geometric earthworks, the soil is rich with phytoliths from fruit trees, palms, and other useful species, far more concentrated than in the surrounding natural forest. This is not a random distribution. It tells us that the areas around these ceremonial centers were deliberately planted and maintained as groves and orchards. Imagine walking from the geometric plaza into a curated garden of towering Brazil nut trees, clusters of acai palms, and fruit-bearing trees, all providing a reliable, renewable food source. This was a landscape designed for abundance. This intentional enrichment is confirmed by the very ground underfoot. Across the Amazon, patches of extraordinarily fertile, dark soil stand out starkly against the region's typically thin, nutrient-poor earth. This is Terra Preta, or Amazonian dark earth. It is not a natural formation. Soil scientists have analyzed its composition and found it is a human-made marvel, a rich compost engineered from charcoal, food waste, broken pottery, and organic matter. Crucially, these patches of supercharged soil are consistently found in association with ancient settlements and earthwork sites. This is the ultimate signature of a civilization thinking in centuries. They weren't just taking from the land, they were investing in it, actively cooking the soil to increase its fertility for generations to come. The creation of Terra Preta is a sophisticated process, requiring knowledge of burning techniques to produce charcoal, and the careful management of organic waste to build a living, nutrient-rich matrix. This proves an advanced understanding of soil ecology. They were not simple farmers, they were ecosystem engineers. Together, the phytoliths and the dark earth form an interdisciplinary testimony that is impossible to ignore. This society organized itself around a profound partnership with the living world. Their monuments were not separate from their sustenance. The ceremonial plaza and the productive orchard were two parts of a single, integrated system. Their greatest construction project was not a single ditch, but the very fertility of their homeland, a legacy of richness that still nourishes the forest today. This deep ecological knowledge may have been their most powerful organizing principle of all, a shared understanding of how to cultivate life that bound their community together across the centuries. The eighth clue lies in the very impracticality of their greatest works. Why would a society invest generations of labor to create colossal geometric shapes, forms whose full design can only be truly appreciated from a perspective they could never physically achieve from high above the trees? This deliberate choice is one of the most telling signatures of a complex civilization. It represents a monumental shift in priorities from survival to symbolism. When a community can reliably meet its basic needs for food, shelter, and safety, it creates a surplus, and what a society does with that surplus defines its soul. Here, they channeled it not into palaces for a king, but into sacred geometry for the community. The earthworks were an investment in ideological expression, a physical declaration of shared beliefs written across the land itself. These enclosures likely functioned as multi-purpose arenas. They were stages for powerful communal rituals, ceremonies that would have reinforced social bonds and legitimized the roles of leaders and specialists. They were massive calendars, their alignments marking the solstices and planting seasons, weaving the passage of time into the very soil. And they were permanent claims on the territory, not with fences or walls, but with meaning. To alter the landscape so profoundly was to say, "We belong here." This place is ours in a spiritual and cultural sense. This creation of symbolic capital was as crucial to their survival as any storehouse of grain. The shared act of building for belief forged an unbreakable social contract. It transformed abstract ideas about the cosmos and community into a tangible, walkable reality. Every person who contributed labor could point to that embankment and say, "I helped build that. I am part of this." That collective identity was the glue that allowed thousands of people to coordinate over vast distances for centuries. The willingness to direct such immense energy toward non-utilitarian ends reveals a sophisticated societal psyche. It tells us they were asking big questions about their place in the universe and answering them not just with stories, but with staggering earthworks that served as both question and answer. Their monumentality was a language, and in its silent, geometric grammar, we can read the profound depth of their organized thought. For centuries, the story of civilization's dawn has been framed by a very specific map. Our textbooks point to the fertile floodplains of the Tigris and Euphrates, the life-giving Nile, and the steady flow of the Indus River. These are the celebrated cradles, the places where we believed humanity first learned to live together in large numbers, to build cities, to write laws, and to coordinate on a grand scale. This river-valley model has been so dominant that it subtly shaped our definition of civilization itself, tying it to a particular kind of landscape and a specific path of development. But the geometric earthworks of the Amazon and the engineered savannas of the Anos de Moxos force us to redraw that map entirely. They reveal that the cradle of civilization was not a single type of place, but a state of mind that could flourish anywhere human ingenuity was met with a challenge. The tropical forest, once seen as a barrier to complexity, now stands as a new cradle in its own right. So does the seasonally flooded grassland. These discoveries trigger a profound paradigm shift. They prove that large-scale social organization and intentional environmental modification are not the exclusive products of predictable river valleys. They are universal human capabilities waiting to be unlocked by different environmental pressures and opportunities. The Amazonian builders faced a profound challenge: poor soil and intense seasonal flooding, and they responded not by leaving, but by engineering a solution so brilliant it sustained them for over a millennium. Their civilization did not arise in spite of the forest, but because of it. The forest provided the materials, the inspiration, and the very necessity for their unique form of organization. This expands the human story from a few privileged riverbanks to a global tapestry of innovation. It demonstrates that our capacity for complex society was not a rare fluke of geography, but a widespread potential, a latent skill in the human toolkit that could be activated in deserts, on mountains, along coasts, and deep within the heart of the world's greatest rainforest. Every ecosystem presented a different puzzle, and ancient peoples around the world found different, equally brilliant ways to solve it. Recognizing the Amazon as a cradle does not diminish the achievements of Mesopotamia or Egypt. Instead, it elevates the entire human narrative. It shows us that the drive to build, to organize, and to leave a meaningful mark on the world is not bound by latitude or landscape. It is a fundamental part of who we are, a story written not just in mud brick and stone, but in the rich dark earth and the geometric ghosts of a managed forest, waiting patiently for us to finally see them. This brings us to a crucial interpretive challenge, one that sits between their world and our own. Our modern minds instinctively seek to categorize, to break things down into their component functions. We look at these immense earthworks and ask, what were they for? Were they ceremonial centers, astronomical observatories, water management systems, or symbols of political power? The temptation is to choose one, to find the primary, utilitarian purpose. But this approach may actually limit our understanding. imposing our fragmented worldview onto a civilization that likely saw no such divisions. For the builders, these places were almost certainly multidimensional, a seamless fusion of the sacred, the social, and the practical. Our distinct categories of religion, engineering, and politics were, for them, probably different facets of the same shining whole. The deep ditch was not either a drainage canal or a symbolic boundary. It was both simultaneously. The alignment with the solstice sun was not just a calendar for planting, but a moment when the community reaffirmed its connection to the ancestors and the cosmic order. The act of building the embankment was not merely civic labor, but a participatory ritual that strengthened social bonds. To separate these meanings is to misunderstand the integrated nature of their thought. Recognizing this holistic worldview is the key to grasping their unique form of organization. Their society was not organized like a modern corporation with separate departments for spirituality, agriculture, and construction. It was woven together like a tapestry where the threads of myth, the threads of ecological knowledge, and the threads of community identity were interlaced into a single, strong fabric. The earthwork was the loom on which this fabric was made visible. This is a profound reminder that our divisions of knowledge are modern constructs. We have specialists for everything from hydrology to theology. They had master builders who are also astronomers and storytellers, elders who understood soil fertility as a spiritual responsibility. Their form of complexity was not built on specialization of function alone, but on the integration of meaning. When we view their work through our functionalist lens, we risk seeing only the shadow of their true achievement. We see the ditch but miss the ceremony it held. We see the alignment but miss the story it told. To truly appreciate their civilization, we must try to see the world as they might have, a world where every practical act was imbued with spiritual significance, and every spiritual belief was expressed through practical, communal work on the land they cherished. This integrated vision may have been the very source of their resilience, the core of the cultural operating system that kept their world running for over 1,000 years. And if that is true, then the echoes of their world, you might still resonate in the most unexpected of places, not just in the soil, but in the living traditions of the forest itself. The ninth clue is perhaps the most enduring of all, written not in a moment but across the slow march of centuries. These earthworks are not just structures, they are permanent, deliberate alterations to the very skin of the continent. To reshape the land on such a scale is to make a profound statement of belonging. It is a way of saying, we are here, we have been here, and we will remain. This is our place. The geometric enclosures anchored communities to specific locations for generations, transforming a tract of forest from a resource to be used into a homeland to be stewarded. This represents a shift from simple occupancy to deep, inherited territoriality. The land was no longer just where they lived, it was a part of who they were, a character in their collective story. The proof of this profound connection is in the maintenance. These sites were not built and abandoned. Archaeologists can see the layers of care, the periodic redigging of ditches, the reinforcing of banks, the clearing of vegetation that occurred over hundreds of years. This continuous upkeep is a powerful ritual in itself. It means that a grandparent could point to an embankment they helped repair as a child and tell their grandchild about the ancestor who first broke ground there. The earthwork became a physical archive of social memory. Each generation, by tending to these structures, renewed its bond with those who came before. They were not merely preserving a monument, they were preserving a relationship. This act of communal maintenance required and reinforced a stable system of land tenure. It implies inherited rights and responsibilities, a customary understanding passed down that certain families or lineages were the caretakers of specific spaces. This is a hallmark of a settled, legally organized society, even if its laws were oral and woven into tradition rather than written on parchment. the landscape itself became their legal document. The placement of an earthwork, its boundaries and avenues could demarcate communal areas, signify places of gathering, or denote spaces reserved for ceremony. It was a contract with the land and with each other, inscribed directly into the soil. More than that, it was their history book. The growth of an earthwork, its modifications over time, told the story of the community, periods of prosperity when expansions were made, or times of hardship when only maintenance was possible. To walk the perimeter was to read the chapters of their past. This long-term territorial claim, maintained by memory and collective labor, reveals the ultimate depth of their organization. Their civilization was not a fleeting event. It was a lasting conversation between a people and their place, a dialogue written in earth and remembered in story, ensuring that even in silence their claim on the land and the land's claim on them would never be entirely forgotten. The rhythm of their society was not a steady drumbeat, but a seasonal symphony. The immense construction campaigns that shaped these earthworks almost certainly pulsed with the agricultural calendar. They were not a constant, grinding effort, but a brilliant adaptation to the land's own cycles. During the long, wet season, when the rivers swelled and the forest was at its most lush, the community's focus would have been on planting, tending, and harvesting. This was a time for the intimate labor of cultivation. But when the dry season arrived, the ground firmed and the demands of farming eased. A different kind of energy could be channeled. This was the window for monumental work. Freed from the immediate pressures of the fields, thousands of hands could be directed toward the communal project of digging ditches and raising embankments. This cyclical mobilization reveals a masterful level of socio-temporal organization. It was an annual, or perhaps multi-year, rhythm that seamlessly integrated the practical needs of subsistence with the spiritual and social imperatives of construction. The society had to possess not just the will to build, but the wisdom to know when to build. This required precise calendrical knowledge. Elders or specialists would have tracked the stars, the sun's path, and the behavior of plants and animals to predict the onset of the dry season with reliability. They needed to know exactly when the rivers would recede and the soil would become workable, scheduling the labor campaign like a military operation, but for peace. The coordination of these periodic campaigns points to sophisticated leadership. Someone had to plan the project phases, organize the workforce into teams, ensure that tools and materials were ready, and manage the logistics of feeding and housing a temporary but massive assembly of people. This was not a casual gathering, it was an orchestrated event. We see echoes of this brilliant system in other ancient societies. The Inca Empire, for instance, famously used a rotational labor system called the Mita, where communities contributed work to state projects like road building or terrace construction as a form of tax, timed around their own agricultural schedules. This pattern is a hallmark of advanced agrarian states, a way to achieve monumental works without collapsing the food production that supports everything. For the Amazonian builders, this cyclical rhythm turned construction into a kind of annual festival of communal identity. The dry season became a time not of idleness but of collective purpose. People from scattered homesteads would travel the causeways to gather at the earthwork site. There, they would renew social ties, participate in ceremonies, and literally build their shared world together. The act of labor was the ritual, and the timing of that ritual was dictated by the heavens and the seasons. This sophisticated dance of time and labor management shows a civilization in perfect sync with its environment. They did not fight against the cycles of nature. They listened to them and composed their greatest works within that natural rhythm. It was sustainability applied to social energy, a way to marshal the full strength of the population for communal goals without ever breaking the delicate thread that connected them to their food supply. This deep temporal intelligence ensured their projects could span generations, each dry season adding another layer to a legacy written in earth. their monumental legacy rests on the simplest of foundations. When archaeologists excavate the soil of these earthworks, they do not find forges for metal tools or workshops for complex machinery. The tools of this civilization were elemental, born directly from the forest around them. The material evidence is a study in elegant simplicity. Sharpened stone axes, carefully hafted to wooden handles, were used to clear trees and cut through tough roots. Primary earth-moving tool was likely a fire-hardened wooden digging stick, a pointed stake that could break the soil when driven by human strength. The excavated earth was then carried away in woven baskets, perhaps made from palm fronds or other flexible vegetation, slung over shoulders or passed hand to hand in long chains of laborers. For heavier lifting or to shape the steep sides of their ditches, they may have used ropes braided from strong forest vines. This toolkit is astonishingly basic, yet it was wielded with such coordinated force that it reshaped the continent. The absence of complex technology makes their achievement not less impressive but profoundly more so. This was a triumph of pure human muscle, of synchronized effort, and of a deep understanding of simple mechanics. They understood leverage, the angle of a slope, and how to move a mountain one basket at a time. The standardization of these tools tells another part of the story. At earthworks separated by great distances, archaeologists find stone axe heads of remarkably similar size, weight, and shaping technique. This consistency is a quiet clue to a higher level of organization. It suggests that the production or procurement of these essential implements was not left to chance. There may have been designated quarry sites where suitable stone was gathered, and perhaps even workshops where skilled individuals shaped them into a standard form. This points to an economy of scale, even in their simplicity. They were not just a society that built together, they were a society that equipped itself in a coordinated way. The material record, though humble, delivers a powerful message. The true technology of this civilization was not forged in metal or etched in stone. It was woven into the social fabric itself. Their most advanced invention was the ability to organize thousands of individuals, to synchronize their labor, and to direct the combined force of countless simple tools toward a single, colossal vision. The earthworks stand not as a monument to complex machinery, but to the unparalleled power of human coordination and shared purpose. Their organizational genius was not locked to a single landscape. The 10th clue emerges from the map itself, revealing that this model of civilization was a replicable system, adaptable to the Earth's many faces. Identical principles of Earth shaping and communal coordination appear across radically different environments, from the flooded savannas of Bolivia to the coastal deserts of Peru. In the Llanos de Moxos, a vast seasonally flooded plain, they faced a world of water. Their solution was not to drain it, but to rise above it. They constructed thousands of artificial mounds, some towering over 30 feet high, creating dry islands for villages and gardens. They built complex networks of causeways and canals that turned the floodplain into a manageable, productive mosaic. This was landscape engineering on a hydrological scale, a society organized around controlling water to create abundance. Move to the upland rainforests of Acre, and the same organizational mind applied itself to a different challenge. Here, the issue was not too much water, but how to create clear, sacred spaces within the dense forest and manage the soil. Their answer was the geometric enclosure, a precise clearing that served as a ceremonial, astronomical, and social hub, integrated into a managed forest garden. Then consider the stark coastal desert of Peru, home to the famous Nazca lines. While separated by distance and culture, the Nazca geoglyphs share a profound conceptual kinship with the Amazonian earthworks. Both involve the large-scale rearrangement of surface materials to create immense, often geometric, forms best seen from above. Both required coordinated labor and precise planning over long periods. Both were likely deeply tied to cosmology, water rituals, and community identity. The specific expression changed with the environment, lines in the desert versus ditches in the forest, but the underlying impulse, the ability to organize people to inscribe meaning onto a vast landscape, was strikingly similar. This pattern of adaptation is the final, powerful proof of a sophisticated social technology. It was not a rigid, one-size-fits-all blueprint imposed by conquest. It was a flexible set of core principles, a cultural toolkit. The central ideas were universal: modify the landscape to suit communal needs, use collective labor to achieve monumental goals, and encode spiritual and practical knowledge into the very land. But how those ideas were executed was brilliantly local. In the floodplain, you build up; in the rainforest, you carve out; in the desert, you scrape away. This adaptability reveals the true hallmark of a resilient civilization. They possessed a way of thinking, a system of social organization and environmental understanding that could be successfully transplanted and tailored. It proves their complexity was not an accident of a particular river or forest, but a portable, intellectual achievement. They had decoded a fundamental formula for human collaboration on a grand scale, a formula that could make a home and leave a lasting mark anywhere on Earth. The organization of this society was not just seen, it was heard and felt. To walk into one of these immense geometric enclosures was to step into a carefully designed sensory environment. Recent research in a field called sensory archaeology asks us to consider the ancient world not just through objects and maps, but through sound, touch, and movement. It reveals how these spaces were engineered to engage the whole body, turning abstract social order into a shared physical experience. The deep ditches and tall embankments did more than mark a boundary; they created a unique acoustic chamber. Imagine the central plaza during a ceremony filled with hundreds or thousands of people. The chants of ritual leaders, the rhythmic beat of drums, or the sound of flutes would have been trapped and amplified within the earthen walls. Sound would have bounced and resonated, creating an immersive, almost overwhelming auditory atmosphere. This wasn't an accident, it was a feature. That collective sound, vibrating in the chest of every participant, would have forged a powerful emotional bond, a visceral feeling of unity that mere words could never achieve. The organization of sound became a tool for social cohesion, making the community literally resonate as one. The experience of movement was equally orchestrated. The long, straight causeways connecting these sites were not merely efficient routes, they were processional pathways. To travel to a major earthwork, communities would likely have moved in organized lines along these raised roads. Walking in single file or in ordered groups, feeling the firm, human-made path underfoot after miles of forest trail, was itself a ritual. It physically demonstrated the connection between home and the ceremonial center, between the individual and the collective. The journey was part of the transformation. Then, upon arrival, the very act of climbing the steep embankment to enter the plaza required effort. That climb was a transition, leaving the ordinary world below and ascending into a sacred communal space. The feel of the packed earth under your hands and feet, the shared physical exertion, all reinforced that you were participating in something larger than yourself. This is what scholars call embodied practice. Cultural norms and collective identity weren't just taught, they were performed, walked, and felt in the muscles. By designing a landscape that demanded specific movements and offered specific sensory feedback, the society ingeniously baked its organizational principles into daily and ceremonial life. The abstract idea of belonging became as tangible as the soil on your skin and the unified chant ringing in your ears. This sensory dimension shows us that their organization was holistic, engaging mind, body, and spirit to create a social fabric of remarkable strength and resilience. The sky above was not a distant spectacle, It was a map etched in light. Archaeologists studying the geometry of these earthworks have discovered that many are precisely aligned with celestial events. The long avenues of certain enclosures point directly to the spot on the horizon where the sun rises on the June or December solstice. Others may track the more subtle cycles of the moon or the rising of significant stars like the Pleiades or Orion's belt. This was not a coincidence. It was a deliberate, sophisticated fusion of earth and sky. On a practical level, these alignments served as a colossal, immovable calendar. By watching the sun's path along these earthen sightlines, the community could mark the changing seasons with perfect accuracy, knowing precisely when to plant, when to harvest, and when the dry season for construction would begin. This celestial timing was the heartbeat of their agricultural and social rhythm, but the purpose ran far deeper than scheduling. Connecting their monumental plazas to the cosmos wove their society into the very fabric of the universe. It transformed their community from a collection of people living in a forest into participants in a grand, celestial order. The earthworks became a stage where the drama of the heavens played out for all to witness, linking every individual to the cycles of creation, time, and the ancestors who first watched those same stars. This level of astronomical integration reveals a specialized class of knowledge keepers. Accurately observing and predicting these cycles over generations requires dedicated observers, individuals who spent their nights charting the slow dance of stars and their days translating those observations into ground plans. This knowledge was precious, complex, and powerful. It had to be meticulously passed down, likely from a master to an apprentice, forming a lineage of sky watchers. By incorporating this celestial blueprint into the very ground everyone walked on, this priestly class did something profound. They made their exclusive knowledge a public, communal experience. Everyone could see the sun rise in perfect alignment with the earthwork avenue on the solstice, even if only a few understood the mathematics behind its prediction. This likely legitimized their authority, positioning them as essential intermediaries between the community and the cosmic forces that governed their world. The heavens provided a perfect, unchanging template for earthly order, a divine justification for the social structure that organized the digging of ditches and the raising of banks. In the end, the greatest design was not on the ground, but reflected onto it from the stars above. A constant reminder that their society was a small, but intentional, part of a much larger and majestic whole. Their long conversation with the land was not always a gentle one. The very soil they enriched holds a climatic record, and it tells a story of profound change. Researchers analyzing sediment cores and ancient pollen from around the earthworks have uncovered a startling pattern. The most intensive periods of construction, those centuries of coordinated digging and building, often align with eras of remarkable climatic stability. The rains came predictably, the dry seasons were reliable, and the forest gardens flourished. This environmental calm provided the steady foundation upon which their complex society could plan, invest, and grow. But the record also shows a shift. Around the time many sites show signs of reduced activity or were gradually reclaimed by the forest, the climate began to waver. Evidence points to periods of increased volatility, including prolonged mega-droughts that may have lasted for decades. This correlation raises a haunting question. Did this brilliantly organized society, so masterful at managing its immediate environment, ultimately meet a challenge from a scale it could not engineer? Their genius lay in local and regional solutions. They built ditches to drain their plazas and canals to direct water from nearby streams. They created Terra Preta to hold moisture and nutrients in their garden soils. But these were adaptations to a known system. A mega-drought represents a fundamental breakdown of that system. When the rains fail across an entire region for a generation, the streams run dry, the water tables drop, and the carefully balanced mosaic of forest gardens begins to wither. The strain would have been immense. The food surplus that freed hands for monumental work would have evaporated. The social energy previously directed toward communal ceremony would have been desperately channeled into survival. The very causeways that once connected communities in shared purpose might have become pathways for dispersal, as groups were forced to move in search of reliable water and food. This does not mean climate change was a simple off switch for their civilization. Societies are resilient, and they likely adapted in many ways, perhaps shifting crops, intensifying fishing, or altering their rituals to plead for rain. But the long-term, generational projects, the sustained investment in landscape architecture, require a bedrock of confidence in the future. When the climate itself becomes unpredictable, that confidence erodes. The story here becomes a powerful case study in the interface between human organization and planetary forces. It shows that even the most sophisticated and sustainable societies exist in a delicate dialogue with the global environment. Their engineering was a response to the climate they knew, a brilliant dance with local rhythms. But when the music of the world changed its tune, the dance became infinitely harder to follow. This realization adds a profound layer of meaning to their legacy. Their earthworks are not just monuments to what they built, but also silent witnesses to the pressures they endured. They stand as a testament to both long-term resilience and the potential fragility of even the most ordered world when faced with a shifting Earth. This leads us to wonder, in the echoes of their experience, what whispers might they have left for those who came after, and what fragments of their worldview survived the great change to shape the forest we know today. The organization of this civilization reached beyond the soil and the stars into the very movement of animals. The 11th clue reveals a society that did not merely hunt the wild, but actively orchestrated it. Scattered around the geometric earthworks, archaeologists have identified networks of what appear to be artificial ponds and carefully dug canals. These were not just for drainage or transportation. They were likely early forms of aquaculture, managed environments for raising fish and turtles. This is a profound shift from foraging to farming, applied to aquatic life. It represents a deliberate investment in a predictable, renewable source of protein, engineered right into the community's backyard, but their management of fauna extended onto dry land. The forest gardens they cultivated, rich with fruit and nut trees, served a dual purpose. While feeding the people, these orchards also acted as powerful game attractants. Animals like deer, tapirs, and monkeys would be drawn to these concentrated food sources, effectively making the hunt more efficient and reliable. The community was not passively waiting for game to wander by. They were cultivating the hunt itself, shaping the forest to bring sustenance to them. Some of the earthwork patterns suggest an even more direct intervention. Certain long, linear ditches or embankments, especially when arranged in converging patterns, may have functioned as game drives. These features could have subtly funneled herds of animals toward a specific area where hunters waited, a form of landscape-scale hunting technology built from earth and understanding. Other enclosures might have served as boundaries, not for people, but for managing areas where valued animal populations could thrive with less pressure. This integrated approach blurs our modern line between wild and domesticated. They weren't just taking from an untouched wilderness, they were curating a productive ecosystem. They were habitat architects thinking in terms of entire food webs. A single fruit tree fed a person, attracted a monkey, and its fallen leaves enriched the soil for the next season. The pond yielded fish, attracted waterfowl, and helped regulate water levels for nearby gardens. Every element was connected, and their earthworks were the hubs of this living network. Such a holistic resource strategy demanded another layer of sophisticated social organization. It required communal rules about hunting rights and seasons to prevent overexploitation of the curated animal populations. It required deep, generational knowledge of animal behavior, migration patterns, and breeding cycles. This knowledge would have been held by specialists, perhaps the same individuals who understood the stars and the soils, further evidence of an integrated worldview. Managing wildlife on this scale is not an act of random chance. It is a calculated, long-term partnership with the natural world. It shows a civilization so thoroughly organized that it thoughtfully made room for every thread in the ecological tapestry, ensuring that their monumental marks upon the land supported a chorus of life, not a silence. The geometric earthworks are not silent ruins of a forgotten world. Their story, and the profound intelligence behind it, echoes in the living traditions of the indigenous communities who call this land home today. For many of these peoples, these ancient enclosures are not archaeological curiosities, but sacred places known to their oral histories, regarded as the work of their ancestors or as homes of powerful spirits. This is a vital, living connection. The detailed knowledge these communities hold about the sites, their locations, and their significance forms an unbroken thread stretching back through time, a cultural memory that has survived immense change. This continuity powerfully challenges the romantic notion of a completely lost civilization, revealing instead a legacy that transformed but never fully vanished. Look at the practices still alive in these regions. The sophisticated agroforestry systems, where the forest is nurtured as a diverse garden of fruit trees, medicinal plants, and useful palms, are a direct inheritance. The careful creation of fertile dark earth to enrich the soil is not a forgotten art, but a practice rooted in deep ecological understanding passed down generations. Even the patterns of communal labor, where communities come together for large projects that benefit all, mirror the social coordination that once built the earthworks. These are not quaint traditions, they are the adapted, resilient expressions of the same core principles that once organized a continent, principles of sustainable landscape management, collective responsibility, and a spiritual connection to place. This living legacy reframes the entire narrative. It means the organizational intelligence of the ancient builders did not disappear with the last dig of a ditch. It evolved, persisted, and found new ways to thrive under different circumstances. The civilization's greatest monument was not just the earthworks themselves, but a way of thinking, a philosophy of how to live within and nurture a complex environment. That philosophy was carried forward in story, in practice, and in a deep, enduring relationship with the forest. Recognizing this shifts our perspective from one of discovery to one of recognition. We are not uncovering a totally alien world, but beginning to understand the deep roots of a world that has always been here, maintained by the knowledge and resilience of its descendants. This connection suggests that the most profound secrets of the past may not be buried in the soil at all, but are kept alive in the wisdom of those who never stopped listening to the land their ancestors so brilliantly shaped. The story we are uncovering is not a relic but a living heritage. As the geometric earthworks are mapped and studied, a critical question emerges, one that goes beyond archaeology and into the realm of ethics. Who has the right to tell this story? For generations, the narrative of ancient societies was often written by outsiders, with artifacts removed and interpretations made without consulting the people for whom these places hold deep ancestral meaning. The earthworks are not merely academic puzzles waiting to be solved by remote experts. They are part of a continuous cultural landscape, woven into the identity and oral histories of indigenous communities across the Amazon. Recognizing this truth has sparked a profound shift in how archaeology is conducted. Today, leading researchers understand that the most complete and respectful understanding comes from partnership. This means collaborating directly with descendant communities, not as subjects of study, but as co-investigators and knowledge holders. It involves listening to their stories about the sites, which may be remembered as places of ancestral power or creation, and respecting their sovereignty over their cultural patrimony. This ethical approach is in itself a new and vital form of organization. It represents a move toward decolonized research practices, where authority over the narrative is shared. In these partnerships, scientific methods and traditional knowledge are not in conflict, but in conversation. A Lidar map might confirm the location of a forgotten earthwork, while an elder's story explains its original name and ceremonial purpose. This collaborative model does more than just produce better history. It begins to repair historical fractures. It ensures that the story of this astonishingly organized ancient society is told in a way that honors its living descendants. Furthermore, it makes the lessons of the past urgently relevant for our future. By learning from their principles of sustainable landscape engineering, their cyclical resource management, and their deep connection to place, we gain more than historical insight. We find potential pathways for modern global challenges, from climate resilience to sustainable agriculture. The ultimate legacy of this civilization, then, may be twofold: the physical imprint of their organized world upon the Earth, and the emerging ethical framework that allows us to learn from it in a way that respects both the past and its enduring future. The 12th clue lies not in what was built, but in what is conspicuously missing. As archaeologists have studied these geometric centers, they have made a surprising observation. There is little evidence for massive, centralized storage facilities, the kind of towering granaries or state-controlled warehouses that were the hallmark of other ancient empires. This absence is a profound detail. It suggests that the wealth and surplus of this society were not concentrated in a single location under the thumb of a ruling elite. Instead, their abundance was likely distributed, woven directly into the living landscape they had engineered. Their granary was the entire managed forest, their storehouse was the network of productive fish ponds, and their wealth was measured in the health of the ecosystem and the strength of their social bonds. This points to a fundamentally different political economy, a system where power was not derived from controlling a hoard of grain, but from skillfully managing the communal resources that sustained everyone. Authority would have come from the ability to organize the rituals that maintained cosmic and social order, and from the wisdom to steward the land for future generations. It was a model built on principles of reciprocity and collective stewardship rather than extraction and accumulation. When a community gathers for a large feast, perhaps held within one of these geometric plazas after a successful harvest or the completion of an earthwork phase, that event is itself a form of distributed storage. The surplus food is not locked away, it is converted into social capital, strengthening alliances, rewarding labor, and reinforcing the status of those who could provide such generosity. This form of organization directly challenges a deep-seated assumption in our study of history, the idea that increasing social complexity inevitably leads to concentrated wealth and authoritarian control. Here we see a society that achieved remarkable scale and coordination without that classic trajectory. Their complexity was expressed through integration and shared prosperity, a reminder that human beings can and have built large-scale order on a foundation of mutual benefit rather than top-down domination. This realization invites us to reconsider the very architecture of power in the ancient world, and to listen for the echoes of this distributed model in the whispers of the forest itself. The final chapter of this story has yet to be written. The geometric earthworks we have mapped are likely only a prologue, the first visible lines of a text still buried beneath centuries of soil and forest. The true scale of this organized world remains just beyond our sight, but not for long. A new wave of technological vision is poised to pull back the final veil, revealing dimensions of this civilization we can currently only guess at. The tools for this next great discovery are already being sharpened. Imagine satellite spectroscopy so precise it can detect the faintest chemical signature of ancient human activity from orbit, pinpointing the location of long-vanished settlements or garden plots invisible to every other eye. Picture advanced ground-penetrating radar arrays being towed gently through the forest, sending pulses deep into the earth to map the ghostly outlines of post holes, hearths, and storage pits lying undisturbed beneath the monumental banks. These are not science fiction dreams, but the imminent next steps in a revolution of seeing. The greatest leap forward, however, may come from teaching machines to see what we cannot. Artificial intelligence is now being trained to analyze the colossal datasets generated by Lidar surveys. An algorithm can scan thousands of square miles of digital terrain in minutes, searching for subtle, repeating patterns in the earth that a human eye would miss. It might detect the faint, straight line of a buried causeway, now just a gentle swell in the soil, or the circular depression of a forgotten ceremonial platform. This machine-aided vision could reveal the connective tissue of this civilization in stunning detail, showing us not just the grand nodes, but the entire web of footpaths, minor homesteads, and field systems that wove them together. Each of these discoveries will be a puzzle piece, refining our understanding from a general sketch into a high-resolution portrait. What might this portrait reveal? We could begin to see distinct cultural fingerprints. Perhaps the earthworks in one river basin consistently use a specific geometric ratio, while those in another favor a unique arrangement of surrounding mounds, signaling different subgroups or lineages within the broader civilization. We might uncover evidence of a system of notation or mapping, symbols carved into stone or pottery that served as guides for the master builders. There is even the tantalizing possibility of finding centralized places of learning or archives, not of parchment, but of arranged stones or earthworks designed to teach the sacred geometry to each new generation. The potential is as vast as the Amazon itself. This bright future of discovery guarantees one thing: our perception of ancient human organization is still in its infancy. Every new scan, every algorithmic insight pushes the boundaries of what we thought possible. The narrative of a simple, scattered past continues to dissolve, replaced by a story of profound coordination and intelligence written across a continent. The coming years will not simply add more sites to a map, they will add depth to our awe, revealing ever greater layers of ingenuity in a dialogue between humanity and the earth that speaks to a sophistication we are only beginning to hear. These threads of evidence weave together into a revolutionary tapestry. The civilization revealed by the earthworks does not fit the classic mold of pyramids and palaces. It presents something entirely different, a model we might call the garden civilization, or perhaps more accurately, a landscape civilization. This was a society whose monument was not a city of stone, but a continent of intention. Its power was not concentrated in a dense urban core, but distributed across a vast, intelligently managed terrain. Imagine a civilization without a capital, where the entire homeland was the capital. The people did not live packed inside walls, but were dispersed in homesteads and small villages, all connected by straight causeways and bound by a shared vision. Their economy was not based on taxing grain from peasants, but on the careful cultivation of the forest itself, a living, breathing system of orchards, fish ponds, and enriched soils that fed millions. Their monumental architecture was not built to glorify a single ruler, but to serve the community and the cosmos, aligning with the stars and hosting the rituals that renewed their world. This model flips our historical assumptions upside down. For so long, we have used a checklist derived from Mesopotamia or Rome, dense cities, written records, monumental temples, and sharp social hierarchies to define what a real civilization looks like. The Amazonian builders force us to expand that definition. They achieved staggering scale, coordination, and longevity through a completely different set of principles. Their hallmarks were dispersal, not concentration, sustainability, not extraction, and cyclical, ritualized labor, not forced tribute. They were fluid, adapting their earthwork designs and land management over centuries, and deeply embedded within their ecology, partnering with the forest rather than conquering it. This is not a primitive society, it is a sophisticated alternative. It proves that human beings can organize themselves into large, complex, and enduring societies in profound harmony with their environment. The landscape civilization offers a forgotten chapter in our collective story, one that does not narrate a rise and fall driven by conquest and collapse, but a long, stable conversation between a people and their place. This realization does more than rewrite a few paragraphs in a history book. It revolutionizes archaeology's very search image. It tells researchers to look for complexity not just in towering ruins, but in the subtle patterns of soil chemistry, in the distribution of fruit trees, and in the geometric whispers beneath the jungle canopy. It offers a powerful, alternative narrative for our own future, a testament to the fact that lasting human order can be built on a foundation of reciprocity with the living world. From the geometric wonders hidden under the Amazon to the vast engineered plains of Bolivia, these mega-scale earthworks are not just artifacts, they are a mandate to rewrite our deepest historical narratives. For too long, the story of civilization was a narrow one, confined to certain landscapes and defined by a specific checklist of traits. What we have uncovered shatters that limited view. These earthworks reveal a civilization far more populous, interconnected, and brilliantly organized than we ever believed possible in such an environment. This was not a scattering of simple tribes. It was a society of millions, a living network of communities who mastered their world not by conquering it, but by understanding it. They united through a shared belief system so powerful it could coordinate labor across hundreds of miles for over 1,000 years. Their genius was not in building up, but in building in, weaving their monuments and their homes directly into the ecological fabric of the continent. They left a permanent mark not of conquest but of cultivation, a signature written in fertile dark earth and the very composition of the forest. This discovery does more than add a new chapter to the history books. It changes the entire genre of the human story. It proves that complex, large-scale organization is not a singular invention that happened once in a fertile crescent. It is a recurring human potential, a spark that can ignite in the floodplain, the desert, and the deepest rainforest. The form it takes is not predetermined. The Amazonian model shows us a path of complexity built on dispersal, sustainability, and a profound partnership with place. Theirs was a civilization measured by the health of the land and the strength of community bonds, not by the height of its palaces. This is not just about the past, it is a vital lesson in human potential for our own time. As we face global challenges of environmental strain and social fragmentation, their legacy of landscape-scale thinking holds a profound key. They demonstrate that a society can be highly organized, technologically sophisticated, and demographically vast without following the classic, centralized blueprint of extraction and domination. They offer a historical precedent for a different kind of order, one rooted in long-term stewardship and collective well-being. Their story whispers that our greatest achievements may lie not in how much we can take from the earth, but in how intelligently we can collaborate with it. The echoes of their world remind us that sometimes the most revolutionary truths are not found in distant stars or lost cities of gold, but are buried quietly, patiently, right beneath our feet.